Hi, I hope you're doing well and being safe. So, for my project, I decided that I wanted to develop a better understanding of my ecological footprints so that hopefully when I return to the US, I could change some of these habits and create lifelong changes. And ultimately change my community as well, and the people around me. I believe it's important for each person to know their footprints, so that they can understand their relationship with the environment and natural resources, and then ultimately climate change. So I first became interested in this topic when I started learning in my classes this fall about the disproportionate consumption of world resources in the United States. Um, so, with that being said, the purpose of this project is to compare how I am with the average American by measuring my footprints from January 1st to December 31st. So, after I measure these footprints, then I'm going to discuss changes that I can make to reduce them. Okay, so as I said in my intro, this project is important because it allows me to know my impact, help reduce my footprints, and then I can ultimately bring all of this information back to my friends, family, and community. It also really helped me understand my place in the world and my ability to make necessary changes, and it helped me understand my relationship with climate change and what I may have done to contribute to these ecological problems. So, of course, the first footprint that I am measuring is my carbon footprint. So, the average US citizen's carbon footprint is 16 tons of CO2 per year. This is according to the Nature Conservancy. And globally, the average CO2 per year is 4 tons. But the scientists say that in order to stay under 2 degrees of warming, the global average needs to be 2 tons of CO2 per year by the year 2050. So there's a large discrepancy between this 16 tons of CO2 in the US and that 2 tons of CO2 that's required by 2050 in order to stay under that 2 degrees of warming. So for my footprints, I actually used 3 different sources to calculate them, just so that I could get a really good number because they all ask different questions. So I wanted to average them and get a good number. So as you can see, my carbon footprint during 2019 was 11.3 tons of CO2. Now, I find this really interesting because I actually started flying for the first time in my life in 2019, and I flew quite a bit. I took 10 different airplanes, if you count the layovers, and they were pretty long flights for the most part, so I find it really interesting that my carbon footprint is actually this low, and it is lower compared to the average American. So these are graphs from some of the sources that I used. So this has the World Wildlife Fund on it, and also the Nature Conservancy. So I really liked how with the World Wildlife Fund, it kind of broke it down by a category of food, travel, stuff, and home. And then for the Nature Conservancy, I liked how this graph broke it down by the number of trees that I would need to plant in order to offset my carbon footprint. So the average American would be 358 trees, whereas I am only at 151 trees. So the next footprint I decided to measure was my water footprint. So water is used for everything in life, what we wear, what we sell, buy, what we eat. And it's very clear that there are direct and indirect uses of water. So for direct uses, that's like when someone showers or they cook or they brush their teeth, they have direct control and a clear idea of the water that is coming out of the faucet. However, these indirect uses of water, these are things such as like clothes or agriculture. These are water-intensive activities that we don't necessarily see the water being used, and so it's a bit harder to understand that use of water. I think it's also really important to recognize that my use of water indirectly impacts all water resources on the planet. Because while water is technically a renewable source, humans are consuming it faster than it can be replaced through the normal water cycle. Therefore, water is both renewable and finite. So during my research, I found this really great journal. It's called Water Footprints of Nations, Water Use by People as a Function of Their Consumption Pattern. And so I really liked this journal because it gave a lot of really great comparisons around the world. And these two photos came from this source. And so the first one is about the average national water footprint per capita. So the green colors are they use less water, and then the darker red, is using a lot of water. So as you can see, the U.S. has one of the highest water consumptions in the world. And so the average U.S. citizen uses 2,400 cubic meters of water per capita, according to this journal. The other graph from this source breaks down water consumption by industry. And so as you can see, most of the U.S.'s water consumption is actually from agricultural production. Industrial goods are also extremely water intensive in the U.S., and then domestic water consumption only makes up a very small portion of each person's water use. So as you can see, these indirect water uses are much higher than the direct water uses. So I measured my water footprint, and it was 1,248 cubic meters of water during the year of 2019. So this is about 1,000 cubic meters less than the average American. So I think that a lot of this has to do with the fact that I really don't buy a lot of clothes, but also a lot of my appliances are newer and use less water resources. But also I changed my diet during 2019 to I started consuming less meat. And so that definitely had an impact on my water consumption as well.